Hello and welcome to Maths with Jacob. This lesson will focus on chance part 2. We're able to predict the chance or probability of some events. For example, in the last video I mentioned that a coin was tossed before the start of a tennis match to determine who serves. If Bob calls heads, what is the chance that a head will show up? So here's a picture showing two coins. That's one side of the particular coin which has a head on it, and the other side we pretend that's the tail. And here's another one. So normally when you see the head, that is the head section, but the other side, whatever the symbol is, we just pretend that's a tail. So most coins have a head on one side and a symbol on the other side representing a tail. So there are two possible outcomes, but only one head. We can say that Bob has a 50-50 chance of winning the toss. We can also say he has an equal chance. Also, Bob has a 1 in 2 chance of winning. If we use a fraction to show the probability, we can work it out the following way. How many heads are there? Only one head. How many possible outcomes? 2, because we have a head or a tail. Hence, the probability of a head, and this is how we write it, P with some grouping symbols and whatever the event that we want. So the probability of a head equals a half because there's one head and 2 possible outcomes. And that's how we work out the fraction. The same applies if you call tail. How many tails are there? 1. How many possible outcomes? 2. Hence the probability of a tail is a half. Now, let us look what happens if you roll a die. That is the singular of dice. When you see the word D-I-E, that just means one of them. The word dice, that means 2 or more. If you want to find out the probability of tossing a 6, we do the following. How many 6s are there? 1. How many possible outcomes? 6, because you have the numbers from 1 to 6. So the probability of tossing a 6 is 1 over 6. What is the probability of tossing an even number? How many even numbers are there? 3. The even numbers on a die are 2, 4 and 6. How many possible outcomes? 6. So the probability of tossing an even number is 3 over 6, which is a half. The probability of tossing an odd number is exactly the same. Let's look at some other examples. Let's start with the days of the week. What is the probability that you were born on Tuesday? How many Tuesdays are there in 1 week? 1. How many possible outcomes? 7, because there are 7 days in a week. The probability that you're born on Tuesday is 1 over 7. Let's look at an example with months. What is the probability that you were born in April? How many Aprils are there in a year? 1. How many possible outcomes? 12, because there are 12 months. The probability that you were born in April is 1 over 12. Now here's some extension work, which is just a little bit more difficult, but it's quite interesting. Let us see what happens when we toss 2 coins simultaneously. That is, you toss 2 coins together and they land on the table or on the ground. Using the above different coloured coins makes the next step easier to understand. Let's pretend one of the coins is yellow and the other coin is blue. Now, let us write down all the possible outcomes. That is, all the possible events that could occur when you toss 2 coins. Well, the yellow coin can have a head. The blue coin can have a tail. The yellow coin can have a head. The blue coin can have a head. The yellow coin can have a tail. The blue coin can have a head. The yellow coin can have a tail. And the blue coin can have a tail. Clearly, there are 4 possible outcomes. Now we can answer any question. What is the chance of tossing 2 heads? Now, two heads mean you have a head on one coin and a head on the other. You can see that that only occurs once. See there? It only occurs once. There are 4 possible outcomes, but it only occurs once. So the probability is 1 over 4. I repeated the diagrams above for ease of reference, so we don't have to keep going back to the previous slide. Here's another example. What is the probability that the 2 coins show a different outcome? That is, when we look at the 2 coins, they're not the same. Okay, here's a head and a tail. So there's one of the ones we're looking for. Of course, see they're different outcomes. One's a head and one's a tail. And here's another one. One's a tail and one's a head. So that occurs twice out of the 4, because they're the same outcome, see, but we want different ones. So the probability that we have a head and a tail, or a tail and a head, so either one of these will do. Well, that occurs twice, as we've just seen. There are 4 possible outcomes. So the answer is 1 over 2, because 2 over 4 can be reduced to a half. That's the simplest form of the fraction. Another example. What is the probability of at least one head showing up? Now, at least one head means one head or 2 heads. It doesn't matter. As long as you see 1 or 2 heads, that is acceptable. Right. This here, there is 1 head, so that's one of them. Here's another one, because you've got 2 heads. And there's another one. So there are 3 possibilities here of the 4, because here there are no heads. So the probability that you have a head and a tail, or 2 heads, or a tail and a head is 3 over 4. And the last example, what is the probability that no heads will show up? That means there are 2 tails, so the probability of a tail is 1 over 4. So there's a pretty good example of a video that gives you some varied examples on chance and probability and how to actually work out what the outcome will be and write the answer as a fraction.